Marcus Chen had everything money could buy: a penthouse overlooking Manhattan, a collection of vintage cars, and a tech empire worth $32 billion. At 29, he'd revolutionized artificial intelligence and made Forbes cover 3 times. What he didn't have was someone who loved him for who he truly was. The realization hit him during his birthday gala. Standing in a ballroom filled with 500 guests, watching women compete for his attention with designer dresses and practice smiles, Marcus felt utterly alone. Each conversation felt transactional. Each laugh seemed calculated. He couldn't remember the last time someone had asked him a genuine question that wasn't about his net worth or business connections. That night, staring at the city lights from his floor-to-ceiling windows, Marcus made a decision that would change his life forever. He would disappear. Not permanently, but long enough to find out if anyone could love Marcus the man, not Marcus Chen the billionaire. 3 weeks later, Marcus sat on a worn blanket on the corner of 5th Avenue and 42nd Street, a cardboard sign propped against his knees. Homeless, anything helps, God bless. His designer suits were locked away. His perfectly styled hair had grown shaggy and unkempt. He wore donated clothes from a thrift store, deliberately choosing items that were clean but threadbare. He'd grown a beard and wore old glasses that changed the shape of his face. Even his closest friends wouldn't recognize him. His assistant, Rebecca, was the only person who knew about his plan. She'd argued against it for hours, warning him about the dangers, the discomfort, the potential scandal if anyone discovered the truth. But Marcus was determined. He'd set up a new identity, a small bank account under an assumed name with just enough money for emergencies, and given himself 3 months. The first week was humbling in ways Marcus hadn't anticipated. People rushed past him as if he were invisible. Some clutched their bags tighter when they walked by. Others crossed the street to avoid him. A few threw coins into his cup without making eye contact, their charity given but their humanity withheld. Marcus had intellectually understood wealth inequality, had even donated millions to homeless charities, but he'd never truly felt what it meant to be unseen. It was during his 2nd week that he met Elena. She appeared on a Thursday afternoon, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. Unlike everyone else, she stopped directly in front of him and crouched down to his level, her brown eyes meeting his without pity or judgment. "I'm Elena," she said, offering him one of the cups. "I work at the bookstore around the corner. Thought you might like something warm. It's getting cold out here." Marcus was so surprised that he almost forgot his cover story. "Thank you," he managed, accepting the coffee with genuinely trembling hands. "I'm Michael Sanders." "Nice to meet you, Michael." She smiled, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Her smile was real, reaching all the way to her eyes, crinkling the corners in a way that made her whole face light up. "Do you like to read?" It was such an unexpected question that Marcus laughed. "I used to, before life got complicated," Elena finished gently. She sat down on the pavement beside him, apparently unbothered by the dirt or the stares from passing pedestrians. "I get that. Books were my escape when things got hard too." They talked for 20 minutes. Elena told him about her job at the independent bookstore, how she was working 2 jobs to pay off her student loans from nursing school. She'd wanted to be a nurse since she was 12, inspired by the healthcare workers who'd cared for her grandmother. She was 2 years away from finishing her debt, and then she'd finally be able to work in pediatrics like she'd always dreamed. Marcus found himself genuinely curious about her life in a way he hadn't been curious about anyone in years. She didn't ask him about his past, didn't pry into how he'd ended up on the streets. She just talked to him like he was a person, like his current circumstances didn't define his worth. "I should get back to work," Elena said eventually, standing and brushing off her jeans. "But I'll come by tomorrow if that's okay, maybe bring you lunch." "I'd like that," Marcus said, meaning it more than he'd meant anything in months. Elena kept her promise. The next day she brought sandwiches from a deli. The day after that she brought soup in a thermos. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. She told him about her family in Ecuador, about immigrating when she was 10 and learning English by reading every book she could find. He told her carefully constructed half-truths about his life, mixing his real experiences with his fictional poverty, surprised by how easy it was to be honest about the things that truly mattered, his loneliness, his doubts, his search for meaning. "Money doesn't buy happiness," Elena said one day about 3 weeks into their friendship. They were sitting in a small park sharing a pizza she'd brought. "My family had nothing when we came here. We lived 6 people in a 1-bedroom apartment, but we were happy because we had each other. My parents always told me that people matter more than things. Marcus thought about his empty penthouse, his superficial friendships, the isolation that came with wealth. Your parents are wise. They are, Elena agreed. They work so hard, both of them. Dad's a janitor, Mom cleans houses. They wanted better for me, pushed me to go to college. Sometimes I feel guilty about my student loans, about how much it cost them to help me. But Mom says education is the one thing nobody can take away from you. The way she talked about her parents, with such love and pride, despite their modest circumstances, made Marcus feel a pang of shame. He'd spent more on his last car than her parents probably earned in 5 years, and he'd barely appreciated it. As the weeks passed, Marcus found himself falling for Elena, not the dramatic, possessive way he'd felt about women before, where they were accessories to his lifestyle. This was different. He loved the way she noticed small things, a bird's nest in a tree, the way the sunset reflected off buildings, a child's laughter. He loved her kindness, not just to him but to everyone. He'd watched her help an elderly woman carry groceries, give her own scarf to another homeless person, stop to pet every dog she encountered. She was beautiful, but it was more than that. She had a light inside her that wealth hadn't dimmed in him and poverty hadn't extinguished in her. One evening, about 2 months into his experiment, Elena arrived looking troubled. She sat down beside him on his usual corner, and Marcus could see she'd been crying. "What's wrong?" he asked, genuinely worried. "I lost one of my jobs," she said quietly. "The bookstore is closing. The owner can't afford the rent anymore. I don't know how I'm going to manage my loan payments now. I might have to drop out of school, at least for a semester." Without thinking, Marcus said, "Let me help you." Elena looked at him in surprise. "Michael, you're homeless, you can't." "I have some money saved," he interrupted, his mind racing. He could transfer funds, could set up something anonymous. "Please, let me do this." "No," Elena's voice was firm but kind. She took his hand and Marcus felt electricity shoot through him at the touch. "That's sweet, but I can't take money from you. You need it more than I do. I'll figure something out, I always do." Marcus wanted to tell her the truth in that moment, wanted to reveal that he could pay off her loans with pocket change, could buy her a bookstore of her own, could give her everything she'd ever wanted. But something stopped him. He needed to know if what they had was real, needed to be absolutely certain before he shattered the fragile trust they'd built. "You're an incredible person, Elena," he said instead. "Anyone who can't see that is blind." She squeezed his hand. "You know what? You've helped me already. Talking to you these past couple months has reminded me why I wanted to be a nurse in the first place. It's not about the money or the prestige. It's about caring for people who need it. You reminded me of that." That night, Marcus made a phone call to Rebecca from a burner phone. Within 2 days, an anonymous donor had paid off Elena's student loans in full. A week later, the bookstore received a generous investment from an unnamed benefactor that allowed it to stay open and even expand. Marcus watched Elena's joy from his corner, knowing he'd never be able to tell her it was him. But the deception was beginning to weigh on him. He'd found what he was looking for, genuine connection, real love, but he'd found it through a lie. The irony wasn't lost on him. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was sitting in his usual spot when a black town car pulled up to the curb. His heart sank as he recognized it. Rebecca stepped out, her face pale and worried. "Marcus, you need to come now," she said urgently, too distressed to remember his alias. "It's your mother. She's had a stroke. She's at Mount Sinai and it's serious." Marcus was on his feet immediately, his homeless persona forgotten. "How bad?" "Bad. The doctors need to speak with you about decisions." "Marcus, I'm sorry, but you need to be yourself right now. She needs her son." He was halfway to the car when he heard Elena's voice. "Marcus." He turned. Elena stood 10 feet away, still in her bookstore apron, holding the coffee and sandwich she brought him every day. Her face was a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. "Elena, I can explain." "You're Marcus Chen." It wasn't a question. He watched the pieces fall into place in her mind, watched her expression shift from confusion to betrayal. "The billionaire. I saw you on the news last month, something about a new AI breakthrough. That's why you looked familiar." "Please let me explain," Marcus said desperately. "My mother is sick, I have to go, but please." "You lied to me." Her voice was quiet but sharp as broken glass. Everything was a lie. Was this some kind of game to you, slumming it with the poor people? No, Elena, what I felt, what I feel for you is real. I just wanted to find someone who could see me, not my money. So you pretended to be homeless, she laughed bitterly. Do you have any idea how offensive that is, how privileged? There are real people suffering out here, Michael, sorry, Marcus, and you treated it like a social experiment. Sir, we need to go, Rebecca urged. Marcus looked between Elena and the car, torn, but his mother was dying. I'll come back, I'll explain everything, please just don't disappear. Elena dropped the coffee and sandwich on the ground and walked away without another word. The next 3 days were a nightmare. His mother stabilized, thank God, but remained in critical condition. Marcus stayed by her bedside, wearing his real clothes, being his real self, and feeling more fake than he ever had pretending to be homeless. The hospital staff treated him with deference. Reporters camped outside. His business partners called with well wishes that felt hollow. All he could think about was Elena's face, the hurt in her eyes. When his mother was moved out of ICU and the doctors said she'd recover, Marcus left the hospital and went straight to the bookstore. Elena wasn't there. He waited outside her apartment building. Public records had made it easy to find. When she finally appeared, returning from her shift at her other job, she tried to walk past him. Please, Marcus said, blocking her path. 5 minutes, that's all I ask. I don't have anything to say to you. Then just listen. He took a breath. You're right. What I did was privileged and naive and offensive. I didn't understand what real homelessness meant, didn't understand the disrespect of pretending. I thought I was looking for authenticity, but I was just running from my own emptiness. Elena crossed her arms but didn't leave. I've spent my whole life being used, Marcus continued. People want my money, my connections, my name. They don't want me. After my 29th birthday, surrounded by 500 people who didn't know me at all, I felt so alone I couldn't breathe. So I did something stupid and selfish. I pretended to be someone else to find out if anyone could love the real me. And did you find out? Elena's voice was cold. Yes, you did. You loved a version of me that had nothing but himself to offer. You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. You made me feel human again. He stepped closer. The feelings weren't fake, Elena. Everything else was a lie, but not that, not how I feel about you. How can I believe anything you say? But her voice cracked slightly. The student loans, Marcus said quietly. That was me, the bookstore investment. That was me too. I couldn't stand seeing you struggle when I could help. Elena's eyes widened. Why didn't you tell me? Because you wouldn't have accepted help from a billionaire any more than you'd accept it from a homeless man. Because you have too much pride and too much principle. Because you're you. He smiled sadly. I should have been honest from the start. I should have trusted that who I am inside matters more than what I have. You taught me that. I'm sorry I learned the lesson by hurting you. Tears streamed down Elena's face. You broke my trust. I know, and I'll spend as long as it takes earning it back if you'll let me. Not as Marcus Chen the billionaire, not as Michael Sanders the homeless man, just as Marcus, just as me. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she said, My abuela used to say that silver and gold can be polished, but a tarnished heart takes longer to shine again. I'll wait, Marcus said simply, however long it takes. She wiped her eyes. I need time, to think, to figure out if the person I knew was real or just who you wanted me to see. He was real, Marcus insisted. The loneliness, the questions, the search for meaning, all of that was real. The circumstances were fake, but the person was always me. Elena nodded slowly. Maybe, but I need to discover that for myself. No more lies, no more games. If we're going to try this, and I'm not saying we are, it has to be honest, completely honest. I can do that, Marcus promised. Then start now, tell me something true, something you've never told anyone. Marcus thought for a moment, then said, I'm terrified that without my money and my company I'm nobody, that there's nothing interesting or valuable about Marcus the person. That's why I hid behind being homeless. At least then I had an excuse for being empty. Elena's expression softened slightly. And what did you learn? That I was wrong. That character isn't about what you have or don't have. It's about how you treat people. It's about kindness and courage and seeing the humanity in others. You taught me that. You and every person who walked past me on that corner, who saw or didn't see me, who helped or didn't help. I learned more in 2 months on those streets than I did in 10 years of business school. Elena was quiet again, thinking. Finally, she said, I'm not promising anything, but maybe we could start over, as strangers meeting for the first time with all our truths on the table. Marcus felt hope bloom in his chest. I'd like that. She held out her hand. Hi, I'm Elena Rodriguez. I'm a part-time nursing student working 2 jobs to chase my dreams. I'm stubborn, I read too much, and I believe people are more important than profit margins. Marcus shook her hand, feeling the same electricity he'd felt that first day. Hi, I'm Marcus Chen. I'm a tech CEO who built an empire but forgot to build a life. I'm lonely, I'm learning, and I just met someone who makes me want to be better than I am. Elena smiled, small, cautious but real. Nice to meet you, Marcus Chen. Nice to meet you, Elena Rodriguez. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would be hard conversations ahead, trust to rebuild, differences to navigate. But as they stood there on that sidewalk, 2 people from completely different worlds choosing to see each other truly for the first time, Marcus knew he'd found something more valuable than all his billions. Someone who loved him not despite his flaws, but because he was finally brave enough to show them. And that, he thought, was worth everything,